Hey everybody, it's Kneecap here, and in this video I'm going to be talking about World of Warcraft subscriber numbers and a little bit of debate that's been going on between Classic versus Retail, where I am an enjoyer of both, so I'll try to be the middle ground there. So I have an article pulled up from Windows Central. I believe that they use this data from Bellular, a very large content creator for World of Warcraft. I haven't always got along with him, but I think he did some excellent work here. I watched his video. His methodology of how he came up with these numbers, I think, was very good. Like logically, everything fits. It is still speculation, but he also did get a soft confirmation that his numbers were close to correct. And I think ultimately his methodology was pretty good. So I think this is a pretty good graph to show the health of World of Warcraft, at least, even if the exact number isn't correct. So World of Warcraft or Blizzard did a presentation at a conference thing, and that's what this top one is. And then down here is Bellular's thing of where he's estimating the actual numbers. And so you can see normal expansion launch, Legion super high, dips down, a little bit, and then Battle for Azeroth a small upwards, and then a huge downward into Classic, which was a gigantic upwards. And then that didn't, Classic held strong for so long, and then Shadowlands hit that peak right back up. Shadowlands dipped way down. Now I think so. This, you would think, well, why didn't BC and Wrath peak it? Somewhere in here, I don't know if this counts or not, because I don't know if this is worldwide or region based or whatever. But at some point, that NetEase thing happened with China, and I wonder if loss of subscribers in China had something to do with this valley here. And it not being peaked up a little bit by Burning Crusade and Wrath. I could be wrong on that. That's just completely speculation by me. But then we see it small up like Battle for Azeroth for Dragonflight. And now we see it peaking up. We see it, first of all, not dropping very much in Dragonflight. And then peaking up for the Season of Discovery release. Which I don't think this is all Season of Discovery, because they also made a lot of good changes to Retail around the same time as far as like gearing and stuff, and a lot of people coming back to Dragonflight. But I do think obviously Season of Discovery is going to be some of this, because the people who do love Classic but wanted some new abilities, we're definitely coming to try it out, right? So I think that you have to give Classic some credit for this rise here, but it also it does speak well to Dragonflight. I think both things are true there, where it speaks well to Dragonflight and Season of Discovery making a difference there. And so, I think generally the WoW community should be happy about this, whether you're a Classic player or a Retail player. And I think for the most part, most of us are. Now, there is a group of people, if you don't know this, there's a group of people, they're small, but very, very loud. So you might have seen them on the internet, but they talk about World of Warcraft a lot, but they hate World of Warcraft and they wish it was dead. These people will say that World of Warcraft has like 50,000 total players or 100,000 total players and worldwide, and nobody plays it and it's dead, and they've been saying it for 10 years. Okay, so there's this group of people that say that, but outside of those people who are crazy, I think the rest of us should be happy that this is happening, especially after how especially how disastrous Shadowlands was, with how bad it was, the lawsuit stuff that was happening, and then like I said, I wonder if the NetEase thing plays into this as well. And the fact that it could recover as well as it did, I think, is a very, very good thing. And it's trending upwards to where if the War Within looks really good, right, this could be a very, very large number. And I think that's good for everybody. I think it's good for Retail and Classic. Now, I think from the Classic players' point of view, since a lot of them just want vanilla, I think they think like, well, I don't care if I want Retail to fail. And Classic will just be Classic forever. I want Retail to fail. I want the company to die. I'll just go play on a private server, whatever. And I think that's a silly thing, in my opinion, because at the end of the day, they can just close down the private servers if they want to, first of all. And then second of all, like, if you want to get like an expansion, I know I've heard a lot of Classic people, they want like an expansion of Classic. So no changes to the gameplay, no changes to dual talent specialization, and none of this stuff nothing that came in BC, no flying. They just want Classic stuff. Right? With new raids or something like that. New dungeons, new raids for Classic. And if you ever want that, you're going to have a big subscriber number, you're going to have a lot of devs working on the game. And if you ever want to simultaneously do that for classic and for retail, I do think it's possible, but the numbers are going to have to be really high, and it's going to have to be like this, like this, like a perfect thing going on for that to happen. And so if you want something like that, you should be rooting for retail to succeed as well, because the teams kind of commingle with each other, right? It's still the same company. And like, if one succeeds, technically the other one succeeds, and they can help the other one out. And I think I think some people from the classic team have helped the retail team out, in my opinion. And I think that's a great thing. Now, and the same thing goes for retail. If this classic spike here after Battle for Azeroth, that was nothing but good for retail. Even though we got Shadowlands directly after, that's because they were already working on Shadowlands. And a lot of stuff has been learned from classic, which Blizzard has even said, and that they've started thinking about putting back into retail from classic, especially storytelling wise, especially questing wise. Like, they want to take some things from classic and put it into retail, the good stuff, the best stuff, right? And I think that's really, really good too. And you know, what we see is there's so many devs in the game right now. They're developing 2 games, and they're doing pretty well with developing 2 games and putting out a lot of content on retail and trying to do things that the classic community wants on classic. And I don't understand why we all just can't be happy, you know, with that, and why there has to be this debate about which one's better. Like, I can give my opinion, right? My opinion is classic leveling is better and PvP is better. Endgame PvP. Retail, PvE is better, and there's more things to do in the game, like collections, pet battles, because there is a pet battle community, believe it or not. Collections, pet battles, dragon racing now, which there's a ton of dragon races. I can't get over how many dragon races there are. I had to do a bunch for an achievement recently. I couldn't get over how many dragon races there are. But and then just other side stuff to do in retail as well. Be it like holiday stuff or whatever. There's some neat stuff. Some of it's silly, some of it's neat. Like the transmog competition is really, really cool for retail. And so there's like a bunch of side stuff to do in retail as well. So retail has like multitudes of things to do, completionist stuff, whatever. And then PvE, endgame. And then classic has really, really good leveling, in my opinion, better PvP. Now I think the PvP could be even better, because just by being more modern or whatever. But I think the fundamentals of PvP and classic are better. And so we're like you mostly rely on like line of sight, kiting, just like it's more simple and yet better, I guess you'd say, almost, in classic, in my opinion. Now you could have the completely different opinion. You could say, well, the only thing I like about retail is the PvP, and everything else I like in classic. And we could have different opinions, right? But the point is that there are good things in both. And you know, I'm someone who started in vanilla, so I have a soft spot for vanilla for sure. But when classic came out, I didn't even get to 60 in original classic because I was just busy at the time, and I couldn't get to 60 in original classic. Now when hardcore came out, I had a little bit more time on my hands, and I was able to grind up a character on hardcore. Now I didn't raid or anything because I don't like the raiding in classic, but it was really, really fun leveling in classic, especially on hardcore, in my opinion. So like, there's good things about both games. Both games should be rooting for the other to succeed, in my opinion, because like, what's it? A high tide raises all boats or something like that. There's a saying that's somewhere like that. I don't know the saying, but like a high tide lifts all whatever. And like that's the case here. It's still all made by Blizzard. And like, as long as like we want the game to be good, as long as the devs are listening and they're trying to make the game that the players want, then we should be rooting for them. And then us rooting for them and, you know, consuming their product, you know, assuming it's good, you know, should raise everything, right? In theory. And so, you know, that's how I see it. And I don't know why people don't see it that way. I get why the people who hate it don't see it that way, because they just hate it. But I don't get why, you know, the average player doesn't see it that way. And maybe they do. Maybe I'm crazy here and I just see too much crap on the internet about it, of people like hating on each other or something like that. But the reality is, like, I think just everyone should be happy looking at this, because there's a chance, it's not a super high chance, but there's a chance that with War Within launch, and if Classic is doing something good around the same time, right? There's a chance that we could get back up to that 10 million sub number, which is remarkable, right? And I think that's really, really cool. For a game this old, especially the classic version of the game, this old, and then retail, who keeps iterating on itself, to come together and just have this gigantic community. I think that's really, really cool, and it's really cool to be a fan of the game when if it's doing well like this. Whereas if you look at this Shadowlands time here, right right here, it was not a fun time to be a fan of the game, because you were thinking, hey, is this game going to die at this point? Because everything was going wrong. You had the stuff with China, you had the lawsuits, you had Shadowlands not being good, and the devs just not listening to retail at all. And then when the final patch of Shadowlands came out, that's when you started to see, okay, they're starting to listen. Dragonflight got a little bit of a bump, and we'll see, right? War Within's not going to do it by itself, I don't think, right? I don't think just with War Within we're going to see a, let's say, 8 million that we see in Classic, right? Maybe War Within does that. That's probably like its top, though, right? Where War Within, it's going to go back down a little bit to the yellow line. Maybe War Within peaks up to 8 million. But if you have something cool with Classic at the same time, I do think we could see that 10 million mark again. And yes, that's across different game modes. Yes, the player base is fractured a little bit, but I don't think you need to worry about the fracturing. Whichever version of the game you play, you have thousands of people to play with at any given moment, as long as you're on a big enough server on Classic. Now, that is the one place where you might not have people to play with, but that's because you're on a small server. As long as you're on a big enough server on Classic, and if you're on retail at all, because of all the connections in retail, you always have thousands of people to play with at any given time. I'm over here in the Forbidden Reach doing dumb achievements, and there's hundreds of people here doing the same thing. Just not all on my shard, but I mean, there's probably thousands of people. There's probably like 30 people on my shard doing this same crap that I'm doing, and then that's just completely irrelevant. And then overall across all shards, there's probably thousands of people here doing it, just randomly, right? And that's great. And on Classic, if you're on a big server, there'll be tons of people in a random place doing something or whatever. And I think that's really cool too. And like you should just be happy about that. It's just a good time to be a fan of WoW. It's a good time to be a player in WoW. And ultimately, what all we should want is for the product to be good, and for the developers to overall listen to us and communicate with us, because that'll help make it good. So yeah, that's it for this one. I just wanted to put my 2 cents in on this whole topic. As always, I do ask you to please subscribe to the channel. Helps me out so much. Other than that, everybody, have a good one.